Good morning, intuitives. In fact, early morning. This video is a departure from my regular content, but I have spoke about it before, and it's been a passion, borderline obsession of mine since early childhood in the early 90s, and that is, Atlantis. I've been fascinated by it my whole life. So occasionally I'm going to do a video on Atlantis, even if it doesn't get very many views. Not that my other videos really get views either, because I'm a nobody hack in front of a tablet talking who barely knows what he's doing. Anyway, so one of the most endearing mysteries uh, that is tied to Plato's Atlantis is the Bimini Road. And if you're unfamiliar with the Bimini Road, it's off the coast of North Bimini Island. It's a inverted J shape that goes for hundreds of feet, and for most of it, it is very symmetrical blocks of, albeit natural, beach rock, and it looks man-made or man-altered. And the question arises, if it appears to be man-made, what the hell is it? Well, interestingly enough, given its inverted J shape, the Bimini Road looks very much like an ancient breakwater or harbor, very reminiscent of, the same style breakwaters and harbors that the ancient Phoenicians used in the Bronze Age. Now, why is this tied to Atlantis? Well, there's several reasons for that. First off, the Bimini Road was discovered in 1968, and interestingly enough, either in the 20s or the 30s, famed prophet Edgar Cayce, who gave thousands of psychic readings dealing with Atlantis, even though he was very rarely asked about Atlantis, said that a remnant of Atlantis would appear in 1968 or 69, and 1968 is when the Bimini Road was discovered. Now, many geologists claim that it's a natural formation. That has been known to happen in nature, but the fact of symmetrical blocks of beach rock. But, why is it in an inverted J shape like an ancient harbor? And even more interesting is why is this structure, which is now 20 feet underwater, located exactly where a harbor would be located above water in the shoreline of 10,000 BC in the Younger Dryas, exactly when Atlantis is said to have existed. Because it's a natural formation and beach rock slopes down. It would be found like that in other places along the island, but it's not. And like I said, it coincidentally, as they would put it, lines up with where a harbor would be according to where the shoreline was at 10,000 BC, roughly, at the end of the last ice age. And there's other interesting features of the Bimini Road as well. Perhaps the biggest authority on the Bimini Road at present moment is Dr. Greg Little, who has dove down there, I don't know, at least dozens of times, probably more. And during his exploration of the Bimini Road, he has discovered what appear to be ancient anchors, like ancient Phoenician-style anchors, which are essentially a large block with a hole bored through it. And actually, these ancient-style anchors that he's found even have like drag marks from where, a rope would go on the rock and erode a groove into that rock over time by the friction of the rope. And even more interesting than that is he's actually, dug underneath the stones that are, above the sand and found wedge stones underneath, like wedge stones that would level larger blocks off in order to make a structure like a breakwater used in an ancient harbor. So a natural formation isn't going to naturally have wedge stones, that many right angles added to wedge stones and stones that clearly look like they've been worked with tools of some kind does raise a lot of mystery. Additionally, not far from the Bimini Road, Dr. Little has discovered a site that he refers to as the triangles, which they occur on the seafloor, in roughly about 30 feet of water, amongst like a barren desert landscape, and all of a sudden there they are, and they appear to be the remnants of ancient storehouses, and they're only located a few feet from where the last ice age shoreline would have been. And it was not uncommon amongst ancient civilizations to have, essentially like storehouses, or what we would have modern day warehouses located at harbors to store goods being offloaded from ships. So there's that enduring mystery of the Bimini Road. Furthermore, it appears on the Peri Reis map. I think so. Or maybe the Orontius Phineas map. It's one or the other. But the Bimini Road is located on these ancient maps, which both the Peri Reis map and the Orontius Phineas map are maps made in roughly, I think, 1513 for the Peri Reis map, but the Orontius Phineas map is around the same era. But the important part is that both of those maps were made, were compilations of older source maps. In case of both of those maps, dozens of much older maps were used to compile them. And Peri Reis has said that some of the maps he used to make his map were salvaged from the library of Alexandria when it was burned, probably, our civilization or mankind's greatest loss of knowledge. And many of them were worm-eaten and in poor condition, so he decided to make a compilation in order to preserve the information contained within those decaying ancient maps. And, this is for a separate video, but I will mention that Antarctica's on them too, and we didn't discover Antarctica until the 1800s. But lo and behold, there, along with near Bimini, is the Bimini Road structure, the inverted J shape. And that raises another very interesting question. Actually, Graham Hancock raises this, and it stumps the geologists that say it's definitely a natural formation. Okay, well, let's say it is a natural formation. How the hell is it on a map shown above water when the last time the Bimini Road, natural or man-made, would have been above water, would have been approximately 10,000 years ago at the end of the last ice age? So that is an unanswerable mystery at this point. And to those that think, well, there couldn't have been any seafaring civilization with, a Bronze Age style harbor at the end of the last ice age, we were hunter-gatherers. Well, that idea that wasn't possible has been disproven. Essentially, there's a couple sites, but the main one being Göbekli Tepe in modern-day Turkey, which has been dated to over 12,000 years old. So this giant megalithic site that has 3D carvings, meaning the carvings, the builders carved away the stone to project a 3D image on some of the pillars, does date from 12,000 years ago, the time that Atlantis is said to have existed. Now, I'm not saying Göbekli Tepe is Atlantis. I'm saying, but we have undisputable evidence now that, megaliths being built at a scale that we thought humanity was not capable of at the end of the last ice age, when Atlantis is said to have existed, does indeed exist. And in my mind, that gives some credence to the idea put forth first by Ignatius Donnelly in Atlantis, the Antediluvian World, that the reason why we have similarities in culture, ritual, buildings on both sides of the Atlantic is because there was a third, more ancient civilization, and it was the survivors of that civilization which spread that knowledge. Who knows? We don't know yet, but there is a lot of similarities, and I'll get into some in future videos. But the Bimini Road is a very interesting site to me. To me, it does look like an ancient breakwater that would be used in an ancient harbor in the Bronze Age. And considering that there's been wedge stones found under it, there have been ancient anchors found around it that's depicted on a map, when it, a map made at a time where it was still underwater, but it's depicting it above water, and it hadn't been above water for about 10,000 years. That, with the discovery of Göbekli Tepe and its age, does seem to make one think that, if not Atlantis, if it wasn't an outpost of Atlantis, leave Atlantis aside for a minute, somebody, some seafaring culture does appear to have been there in an era when we think that mankind was not capable of having such a seafaring culture. So, as Hancock would say, are we a species with amnesia? Is there a lost civilization? I find that idea fascinating, and I think slowly but surely, evidence that at least points to that being a possibility is being unearthed. 12,000 years is a long time to discover what could be left of that civilization, particularly if you're talking like wood structures and things of that nature. We do have obviously megaliths from that era. And there are sites in the Andes as well that can point to that, and stories from ancient cultures when we made first contact from sites that I think could be much older than archaeologists think. And the ancient cultures like the Inca, who told the conquistadors at the time, like, no, we didn't build that. That was built by the gods thousands of years ago. Could there have been, some quote mother culture that brought civilization to both sides of the Atlantic? And is the Bimini Road indeed an ancient breakwater or harbor? Is it a remnant of Atlantis? Is it a remnant of an Atlantean outpost? Is it a essentially a small outpost built by the survivors of the destruction of Atlantis? If nothing else, more investigating is needed on the Bimini Road. It does stand as an enigma today.